What's up? What's up? We're here with another episode of BoomBox Weekly.
You're listening to BoomBox Weekly.
What's up, y'all? We are here with another episode of BoomBox Weekly, and we have the man himself in the building who just announced a Hulu special coming to your screen soon, so we're going to get to that in a minute. I am Gentel, Sharrie.
Omar Cook, you already know what time it is. Back with another dope episode of BoomBox Weekly, and I'm honored. You all have a dope guest today. Man, we got a legendary actor in the building today. You know what I'm saying? Legendary actor, producer, writer. I mean, you've done a lot of things. Mr. Tony Winters himself. What's up, brother?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tony
Thank you for
Winters
having
in
me.
the building.
I appreciate you guys giving me this platform to share my journey with you
Absolutely.
and your audience.
Absolutely. You've had a interesting journey, being born in San Diego, then moving out to Detroit, then moving back to San Diego,
Right.
where you attended high school there, and then you also went to college at the University of San Diego. And then you also went to San Diego City College. I'm sorry. That's
More
where
time
you-
at San
yeah.
Diego City than I
There you
did
go.
at
Yeah.
UCSD. When I got to, after my second year of college, my younger brother was killed
Wow.
in a carjacking. Let's just leave it there. And I just didn't want to spend any more time in the classroom. I suddenly became aware of my own mortality, and I just was anxious to start my life.
Yeah.
And I knew that San Diego was always a pit stop for me.
Right,
It was as close to Hollywood as I could get.
Right.
So as soon as I was able, I used to catch a Greyhound bus from San Diego to Los Angeles because I didn't have a car. I was broke. And so I caught a Greyhound bus up here, and I went out to Universal Studios. I would catch a city bus from Hollywood to Universal Studios, and I got a bunch of applications. And I went back to San Diego because I wanted to be a tour guide. I figured that was the way to, get noticed and to learn the business. And in many ways, I was right.
Yeah.
And in many ways, I was right because as a result of that job, I met an actor, producer named Leon Isaac Kennedy. Leon was a very important person in my career because he was producing films, black African-American themed films in Hollywood between, I'd say, 1979 and through the mid-'80s, suffice it to say. He did a handful of them. And I recognized him. He took my tour at Universal. And we got to chatting, and I looked at him. I said, "Excuse me, man, are you Leon Isaac Kennedy?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "What are you up to? What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I just wrapped a movie called Hollywood Vice, I believe was the title of it." And he said that, and I'm in the process of co-producing Penitentiary 3. Yeah. And, ignorance being bliss, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to ask this, but I said, "Hey, man, since you're producing, maybe you can help me out. I'm an actor. I'm trying to get my SAG card." Right. And he said, "Okay."
I mean, closed mouths don't get
how
fed.
does that happen? And he wrote down his home phone number. This must have been March. He said, "Call me in June. We're going to production." I called him in June, and true to his word, right down the street at Museum Square here on Wilshire, we set up an appointment with the director, Jamal Fanaka, and Jamal looks at me and says, he turns to Leon and says, "He looks like you got some sense. Let's make him one of our reporters." And that was the beginning of my professional acting career, man. I had done a lot of theater in San Diego, but that was the first time I had ever gotten a paycheck for being an actor.
I mean, sometimes you just got to ask y'all. Y'all just, you just got to ask. It really might come like that. You just never know.
Absolutely.
So when was the first time you really got the acting bug? Like, which movie or TV show were you watching growing up that you were like, this is what I want to do?
Oh, wow. Cooley High.
Okay.
Cooley High, absolutely. I remember being that must have been 1975-ish. I was a pre-teenager, and I went to see it at our local movie house.
Yeah.
And and I was blown away by it. I like a lot of people in your generation may not have seen it or don't know of it, but I liken it to. I say it's the Boys in the Hood of my generation.
Yeah.
You know what I
Got you,
mean?
okay.
And it's funny now that I know Glenn Turman, who played Preach, and I was at Lawrence Hilton Jacobs' house over Thanksgiving weekend. Well, not at his house all weekend. I was there for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And these people are colleagues, by some stretch of the imagination, they could be considered friends. So it's weird how life can bring you to places. But yeah, that movie was very, very impactful for me. And I remember at the end, they had this. They had these graphics that showed what happens to each character, and it said, "Preach." The Glenn Turman character goes off to Hollywood and becomes a very successful screenwriter because it was based on Eric Monte, the guy who created Good Times and he wrote the movie Cooley High. And I was like, oh, you can do that? Because these guys were like me. They came from the inner city, and they made something of themselves. And I was like, well, if he can do it in this movie, then
I can do it too.
I can do it too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you that was a big part of my inspiration. And also at that time, you got to remember, television had Good Times and What's Happening Now and Sanford and Son. So, and if I may, but growing up in Detroit at the time when I did, it was the shadow of the Motown era.
Yes.
And
yes.
And
your father was the founder of the Pelicans, right?
Okay.
Well, you going way back,
Come
bro.
on now.
Okay.
My father was in a singing group called the Pelicans back in the early '50s, so that was pre-Motown.
Okay.
My father led a very interesting life. But I was going to say that growing up in Detroit when I did, the mayor was black. He was one of the first black mayors in America of a major city, and the fire chief was black, and the entire power structure was black. My mother worked for doctors when I was really young, and then she went on to work in the court system during my teen years. So I was surrounded by successful black folks. So it never occurred to me that I couldn't be something that I wanted to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
And just saying, well, I can't do that because I'm black, just wasn't in the cards.
Right in front of you.
Success was all around me. So there was nothing you couldn't do. It was just how hard are you willing to work, and you're only limited by the stretches of your imagination.
Literally.
That's an interesting time period to actually grow up in and really try to strive to be in the entertainment industry where there's not a lot of like major black roles, that's going around. And I saw that you worked with obviously Sidney Poitier. Our first black Oscar winner there. How was that experience?
It was amazing. It was amazing for a number of reasons. Firstly, I got cast in a movie called Sneakers.
Okay.
Starred Sidney Poitier, Robert Redford, River Phoenix, Dan Aykroyd, David Strathairn, Mary McDonald, Ben Kingsley. So they were like, and the director had won an Oscar for the Kevin Costner movie, If You Build It, They Will Come, Field of Dreams. So there were like 4 Oscars on that set,
Legends.
And James Earl Jones and several nominees. So I knew it was a Robert Redford film when I got cast, and so I was invited to the table read. I only had one line, but I had a week on the movie, which is a long time.
Still a win.
That's
It's still a win.
It was still a win. But so I'm sitting there at the table read, with my little script and my one line, and in walks Redford. I was ready for him. Then in walks Sidney Poitier and James Earl Jones, like they're coming to the plant to go to. I'm like, holy shit, James Earl and Sidney. And then in walks, the rest of the cast, which I've already mentioned. And then we worked at Universal, where I had been a tour guide 5 years previous, which was pretty amazing. And I had read Sidney's book while I was in college called This Life. And he sat down next to me at one point because I knew better than to go running up and, hey, and fan out on him. So he sat next to me at one point and we fell into conversation. And I recalled a story from his book in which he first auditioned for the United Negro, the Negro Ensemble theater group in New York. And he was so bad It was his first audition. He wasn't even sure what an actor really did because he could
Right.
barely even speak English or read. And the guy that was conducting the audition grabbed him by his collar, and he had been washing dishes in New York. He had been making a living as a dishwasher, and the guy threw him out of the theater and said, "Go get a job washing dishes."
Dang.
So we talked about that story, and he couldn't figure out how the hell did that guy know that I was a dishwasher, So anyway, we laughed about that, and he was just the most warm and gracious and just open human being. He was everything you would have wanted Sidney Poitier to be. And in my generation, that he was everything. He was the only one.
Right.
In yours is Denzel, and Denzel's a few years older than me, but in my generation coming up, it was Sidney was
Yeah.
the man. He was absolutely the man.
And he could have took that no as like straight rejection and never came back.
Absolutely.
And look at his legacy that he left.
Right.
A remarkable legacy,
Yeah.
to say the least. Coming from Jamaica with, third or fourth grade education, could barely speak English, had this heavy accent.
Yeah.
And, so working with him was, again, one of those life full circle moments, man,
Crazy, because you went from reading his book, you know what I'm saying, from watching Cooley High to hanging out with the guys on Cooley High to standing next to Sidney Poitier and having a conversation with
Not
him.
necessarily in that order, but
Yeah,
but all
these
those
are,
things happened,
full circle moments.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's top tier manifestation right there. And now that
Top-tier
you have,
manifestation.
Like that.
Write that down for me, please.
Top tier manifestation.
you went from that to now having a storied career of almost 100 productions between commercials and TV and movies. Talk about, well, first of all, how I discovered you was before I even met you. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
yeah.
Was Smart Guy. That was where I remember
Wow,
you from. Was
wow.
the Smart Guy clip. So I actually saw the Smart Guy clip on your social media. I was like, wow, that was him. You know what I'm saying? That was an iconic role right there. What's been your favorite role so far in your career?
That one seems to be the most memorable. The one from Smart Guy, which to me was,
Right.
but it seemed to have taken on a life of its own since the advent of social media.
Right.
But I'd say, I'll tell you one thing about Smart Guy. That's when things started. That's when things started to get better.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, I had only managed to get a line or two or three, one scene. But when I got Smart Guy, that was the beginning of the build towards the career that I enjoy now.
And would you say that was like your breakout role?
I don't know if I've had a breakout role, but that was one that definitely I think helped me see what I was capable of doing. And but the one that came along around the same time was I did an episode of Criminal Minds in which I played an activist civil rights minister named Reverend Barlow Williams.
A little different from the cop roles you've been playing.
Yeah, I wasn't, police freeze anymore. You're under arrest. Come with me. That was what it was, man, for a long time.
Yeah.
And when I got that one on Criminal Minds, I was like, okay, I'm moving. It's not quite as rapidly as I wanted to go, but I am moving in the right direction. Smart Guy. Roger Corman just passed a couple of days ago. I don't know if you know who he is, but Roger Corman he was a independent film producer back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. He produced a lot of the blaxploitation films we saw in the 70s and a lot of low budget stuff in the 60s. But anyway, I got one of his last films called Captain Nuke and the Bomber Boys, and I had 2 weeks on it. I had never had 2
nice.
weeks on anything, It was always a day here, a day there, and so that was around that time, the late 90s, when things started to move in the right direction.
Yeah.
We always want things to happen when we're young and cute, but
right.
sometimes it happens when we're a little bit more mature and cute, like me.
Hey, Hey, time is good. You know what I'm saying? You know, black don't crack.
Black
You
don't
got that
crack.
right. You got that right.
So
Yeah.
talk about your new role that's coming out on Hulu that you announced today, The Supreme
It's called The Supremes at Earl's All You Can
at
Eat.
Earl's All You Can Eat. Okay, gotcha.
And
All you can eat. That's
Earl's
it's a
All You
name.
Can Eat is a
Yeah.
restaurant that my character Earl owns.
Okay.
Okay,
We see
so-
you, Earl.
Right. I am the. You can say the Supremes are the titular character, but I like to think that I am. No, it stars Sanaa Lathan,
Okay.
Uzo Aduba, and Anjanou Ellis.
I saw Mackay Pfeiffer's in it too.
Mackay, Russell Hornsby, Vondi Curtis Hall, Julian McMahon.
Okay,
You might
okay.
remember from Nip Tuck.
Tony Winters.
Yes.
And Tony
As
Win-
Earl.
But and it explores what happens is it begins in 1968, and these three young ladies walk into my restaurant. They're high school age, and I think my opening line is something like, because this again it's 1968, it's the height of the Supremes' fame. I say, "You're so pretty and shiny, remind me of the Supremes." You know what I mean? And it kind of stuck. So that became their nickname. So it's got nothing to do with Dinah Ross and the
Okay.
Supremes. you
Okay,
know?
okay, gotcha.
Nothing to do with them at all. I dubbed them the Supremes, and it's about the ups and downs of their friendship over the next 40 years.
Okay.
You know, and how my character kind of impacts their lives over the course of their friendships and the lives of everyone in the community. Earl was that dude, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's about all I can really say about it right now. But it was just a wonderful, wonderful gift. I'm not sure how it came my way. I auditioned.
God.
Then right on. Then I auditioned again, and I got the email saying that I booked it. I'm like, holy Toledo, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And so I go to North Carolina, and I'm there longer than I've ever been on location with anything, a couple of months.
Wow.
And it was just the most amazing journey that I've ever taken as an actor. And I thank Tina Mabry for casting me. She's our director, our esteemed director. And so that's the story there. And it begins streaming on Hulu on August 23rd.
Let's go.
Tap in, y'all.
Yeah.
Tap in. August.
Tap in, whatever that means, do it.
Yes.
Tap in.
Tap in.
Hey, you know, so August 23rd, Hulu, we're going to be tapped into your show. You
Okay.
know, we're going to be watching. It's got to be a dope feeling to know that you're still excited about booking roles after all this time, after all the roles that you booked, that it's still an exciting experience for you.
Absolutely, Omar. I got to tell you, when I get an audition, and I read it, and it's for something that I really want, I'm as excited as I was when I was 19. I kid you not. And before COVID, when you used to have to go to auditions, I used to get all dressed, get in my car, drive across town, walk in, see all the fellas in there, have my game face on, and do the thing. But I'm still as excited about being an actor. But the career has expanded. You know, I'm also a screenwriter. In fact, I'm developing a Christmas movie with a renowned director who I cannot name.
Yeah.
I'll tell you off camera. I'm developing a Christmas movie, and I've produced some things. And in fact, two of the films that I've written and produced, they're currently on Prime Video. One is called Retiring Tatiana. It's a romantic comedy, and the other is called Section 8, which is a family drama.
Both films,
Yes.
which won at the Pan-African Film Festival as well. Go tap in.
Word. I like him.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
dope. That's
Yeah, Retiring Tatiana was really the first thing I'd ever written, and it was based on a weekend I spent with a young lady. I took her back with me to Detroit for a very important family function, and she acted a fool all weekend. And I said, man, you have just lived a romantic comedy. Because at this time, I had just seen My Best Friend's Wedding and Chasing Amy. So I was kind of in that mode, and I was like, and black folks weren't doing this. Everybody was trying to remake Boys in the Hood. It was, that era of... you know what I'm talking about, Omar.
The crime dramas coming up.
Yeah, everybody was trying to be whore,
had, like,
you know,
Jews.
New
whore.
Jack City. You know what I'm saying? That
Yeah,
time.
it was that time, and I said I want to do a romantic comedy with black folks, you know, because that's not really my experience. That whole street thing, you know. So I wrote it, raised the money from my Uncle Harry and my dentist and whoever I knew would give me money, and I never had all. I raised like $50,000. I never had it all at the same time, and so I would shoot 3 or 4 scenes and send them out, and people would send me money, and I produced it, and it won Audience Favorite Award at the Pan African Film and Arts Festival 2000. Yeah,
Congratulations!
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I was able to cast all my friends.
Yeah.
Love that.
That's how I wanted to roll, because like if you see like a Woody Allen movie or he uses the same people over and over
they
again.
keep it in the family.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to use all my friends, and we get a chance to act and make money together, and share our art. And I just figured somebody else would do it. I didn't realize I would have to be the dude to do it.
But sometimes you have to,
Right.
like with Omar, then with 24/7 Live Culture and Adonis, they got to put it in action. They let their friends, and we all collab together. So it's really cool. So I definitely feel you. But sometimes you have to do it yourself, because if you don't, it's not going to get done.
Right.
That's a fact.
It's not going to get done. And you're just going to be waiting. But it's like you have the tools.
Right.
You have the tools.
And that Tatiana experience kind of told me you no longer have the luxury of sitting around waiting for the phone to ring.
Right.
You have the talent, the talent and the skill set to make things happen yourself.
Yeah.
So,
Especially winning. Then when I know once you won, you were like, oh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, I can't be lazy no more. Even when I don't have anything to do, I can create something to do.
Yes.
Once you get that first award, it's like, oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm up.
And then the second one I produced, it went on to win the audience favorite at the Arizona Black Film Showcase.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
And I was like, okay, I guess
In a whole
I'm a
different
writer
state.
producer now. And so, I sat down and I wrote everything that I've ever conceived of myself doing.
Yeah.
But now this Christmas movie,
Right.
it's got no part for me. I just
You write
Not
yourself
even
in?
a cameo?
I guess there's probably something I can do,
Yeah,
but
we
I've
gotta-
usually written myself leads. You know what
Okay,
I
I
mean?
see what you're saying. Why did you feel like in this one in particular you didn't want to write yourself as a lead?
It just, there was no, as I was beginning to tell the story, it just didn't, I only if my presence serves the story would I insert myself, because casting is everything.
Yeah.
And if you aren't right for the role, like there's the father, he's too young. Then there's another character which I don't want to talk about just yet. I'm not the right type for.
Gotcha.
And there are other actors who are much better that type. And those are really the only 2 major roles that are for a black man.
Gotcha.
So and you know what? I guess it's maturity too. I don't feel the need, because I've done so much, and I don't feel the need to be in everything that I write.
Yeah.
So
I definitely understand that.
yeah.
You get to the point where you are in your career where you're in a position to be able to give back to others and put people in positions to basically play out your writing. I mean, that's going to be amazing to see.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And you've written, so you know what it's like to have talented actors like Sharrie, read your words and act out your scenes. It's more powerful than acting, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, it's dope.
I love that side of it. It's empowering to see all of my friends and peers being able to shine on camera, get their time, and seeing their name in the credits, and seeing them be excited, the premieres, that type of deal. Being able to enjoy things with your family and friends is amazing.
Right.
So I definitely understand. You wanted to cast your friends.
Right.
Yeah.
That was my whole idea too, was to make sure that my friends had roles.
And I recognized that in you when we met online on Instagram. I said, this young man, he has a vision. He's working towards that vision, and he's writing, he's producing, he's acting. If I may, I saw a lot of myself in you, and I said, I like this kid. I don't know who he is, but I like this kid. And I started just kind of following him and seeing that he was doing some interesting things. And I said, and I even called you in to work on one of my projects.
You did. It was the TV series.
2 Degrees,
Yeah, 2
my
Degrees.
buddy's web series. I
Yep.
wrote and directed an episode.
Okay,
Shout out to Carl.
Which was
You know what I'm
exhausting.
saying?
I was like, directing is like a real job.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Literally.
I like writing, I like producing, and I like acting.
Acting is
Directing
your favorite,
is
you would say? Oh, we're right.
they don't all seem mutually exclusive. Like one
Right.
is higher on the chart than
Right.
than the other. They all seem part of the same whole to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Being creative.
Yeah.
acting is certainly more fun.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because you get your lines, you get your dressing room,
Yeah.
you get to walk out there and they show you where to stand and
Yeah.
you do your thing and then you walk home.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
but when you're producing, you don't
no
walk
home.
away like
Oh, yeah, no.
Right, ain't
the
no
work
home.
begins when the actor leaves.
Right.
Literally.
And you've done a
Absolutely.
lot of work prior to him getting there.
Yeah.
You know, so, but yeah, acting is definitely, I'm making a lot of noise with this chair, aren't I? Acting is definitely the most fun.
Yeah.
Writing is a close second, especially when I nail a story that has a plausible beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
And it's a satisfying story to not only read, but to watch.
Right.
There's nothing else quite like that, man. So,
Absolutely.
and then to produce, to actually, you know,
Yeah.
push that boulder all the way up that hill
Yeah.
and get it done is pretty awesome too. So they're all three part of the same whole to me.
Where do you see your career being in the next about 5 years or so as you progress?
I see myself doing. I'd love to get a television series.
Okay.
That's, you know, for any actor working in Los Angeles, you guys know this as well. That's the holy grail.
Yeah.
I've come close on some things. I've had recurring roles on things, but I've never had, you know, a series where I'm week in, week out.
Right,
So I would love to get a network television series. But in addition to that, I certainly see wonderful character parts in films, you know what I mean, in the years ahead. I think I'm going to keep going till the wheels fall off, man. I don't really see the end in sight,
Yeah.
you know.
That's a blessing.
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
I still get a kick out of it. You know, when before the strike, the auditions I was getting were the best auditions I've ever gotten in my 35 years in Los Angeles. The roles were challenging and you know, high profile projects, and I just said, you know, now's not the time to walk away, Tom.
Right.
Yeah.
Now's the time to, you know, continue working and doing your best, the best that you can. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are going to take a quick little break and
Okay.
we're going to give a shout to our proud sponsors, 24/7 Live Culture. We are back and we have our special guest, Tony Winters, and we were just talking a little bit about the strike. And I have to ask you, since the strike has been over, do you feel like the industry is still going at a slow pace a little bit, or do you feel like it has picked back up?
Definitely a slow pace. Though I was talking to my manager a couple of days ago, and he was telling me how busy things were. So I'm like, well, this brother ain't worked in a minute. But you know what I did? Just before the holidays, well, let me start again. Last year, I saw a play at a theater called A Noise Within in Pasadena. It was an August Wilson show called Radio Golf. And I was pretty blown away by it. And I was like, oh, man, I want to set my sights on this, because I had been away from the theater for about 8 years.
Okay.
Last theatrical production that I did was a one-man show called The Devil and Billy Markham.
Okay, I see you.
Over here on-
One-man show.
Nice. It takes a lot.
You gotta,
It does.
hey,
It does.
that's a whole story in and of itself, but that's not where I was going with this. But so I saw Radio Golf there, and I said, you know, I want to come to work at this theater. When I saw that they were going to do this play,
Yeah.
I made a point of auditioning for it.
Yeah.
I reached out to the director, who was a Facebook friend, but I really didn't know him. Greg T. Daniel, and he arranged. He got right back to me from my inbox, and he arranged for my audition.
Yeah.
And I auditioned for the play, and I wasn't cast. I had a terrible audition.
Oh, wow.
It was really quite terrible, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because the only acting I've been doing or auditioning I've been doing is the self-tape
Gotcha.
right here.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's like a difference.
Oh, it's a completely different
Yeah.
animal. And he said, use the room. And I said, oh, you want me to move? I don't move. I stand still.
Right.
I had forgot I was really rusty,
Yeah.
with respect to acting in the theater. So I wasn't cast.
Yeah.
And they, a couple months later, they asked me if I wanted to understudy the role of stool pigeon.
Okay.
So
Well, wasn't that bad? They still
yeah,
saw
King,
something.
King Headley the Second. It's the name of the play. Goodness gracious, Tony.
King Headley. Okay, I've
King
heard of
Headley
King
the
Headley.
second.
Yeah.
Go.
And so I went and so I accepted, the understudy job. And so I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to actually have to do this. I
Yeah.
just need to learn the lines and, collect a couple of paychecks and be on my way.
Yeah.
And don't you know,
You had to do it.
I had to do it. I'm the only I was the last understudy they brought on.
Yeah.
And the only one who actually had to perform on stage.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks ago, April 27th, I had to go on.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
And all my friends showed up and showed out, man.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
that's
And
amazing.
so I was probably 75-85% of what I know I could do. I just didn't have enough time. I mean, I literally had I came on 4 weeks before, and they told me 2 weeks prior that I had to do it.
Wow.
And this is August Wilson.
Yeah.
You had a lot of lines to memorize and
Dude.
Yeah, I already know.
You want to hear my opening monologue?
What's the
Uh-huh,
monologue?
yeah.
Let's get it.
Let's see if I can
Y'all
remember.
about to be tuned in for
Right.
something iconic and great right here on the show.
I began entering on a ramp from the audience, and we hear a cat's meow. And I say, you stay away from them dogs now. They're going to come for these bones. He meows again. I'm going to get you some fish heads tomorrow. I got to go down to the strip district. Used to be a live fish market right down there on Center. Times ain't nothing like they used to be. Everything done got broke up. Pieces flying everywhere. Look like it's going to get broke up some more before it get whole again. If it ever do. Ain't no telling. The half ain't never been told. The people don't know, but God's going to tell it. He going to tell it in a loud voice. You ain't going to be able to say you didn't hear it. People wandering all over the place. They got lost. They don't even know how they got from tit to tat. Aunt Esther know. She 366 years old. She got the book of life. And it goes on.
Okay.
Hey.
You took us in the moment of setting. I felt it.
Well, I hadn't had to do it in a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
so
Hey, that's how you know
It's
you're
kinda
a top-tier
dissipating now.
actor, when you can go on the spot and drop a monologue.
No,
So,
facts,
you know,
facts,
Yeah.
facts. Thank you.
well, if
Absolutely.
I'd had a few minutes to brush up, I'd
Yeah.
have done the whole thing. But anyway, yeah.
No, that was
Yeah,
amazing,
it was.
man.
It was.
Yeah.
Because, usually people don't, do this.
Right,
so.
Yeah.
right. We ain't run across too many people that can actually just drop the monologue
Yeah.
on site, So you guys just heard something real iconic right there. You played a number of roles recently that were pretty dope. You played in the role of Clive, Queen Sugar, and then you also played a coach on National Champions.
Yeah, Queen Sugar, man, that was an interesting journey to that role. I played a character named Clive on Owns Queen Sugar. And Clive owned a restaurant on the show, not unlike Earl, called the High Yellow.
Yeah.
And I have an agent in the Southeast.
Okay.
And he got me an audition. No, I had an audition for a movie. Now, follow the bouncing ball here. It's kind of complicated, but I had an audition for a movie called Thank You for Your Service. It was written by Jason Hall, who had written American Sniper. And so I auditioned for this movie. I had to do my first self-tape. First time I had ever done a self-tape. I had props, I had furniture, I had all kind of stuff going on because I had never seen one. Because here in Hollywood, we went to auditions. I had no idea what it was like. So they said, you got to make a self-tape. So I did the best I could. And my agent calls me. He's hollering at me. He's upset that this is not how it's done, blah, 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 blah. But guess what? They wanted to see me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, almost. So it was for the role of a, what do you call it? A PS when you're suffering from the effects of war,
PTSD.
PTSD counselor, and it was the biggest role I'd ever been considered for in a mainstream feature film. And so they wanted to see me. He said, "You never have to go to an audition. I never have to go to a callback." So anyway, they wanted to see me in Atlanta. So it was something really special to me.
Yeah.
So I had to fly to Atlanta on my dime.
Right.
So I go to Atlanta.
Because you were probably submitted as a local, huh?
Exactly, a local hire.
I feel that.
And so anyway, I go on audition, had a wonderful audition, fly back to LA, and so my agent calls me and says, "Tony, we got good news and bad news for you." I was like, "Well, let's start with the good news."
Yeah.
He said, "You booked. Thank you for your service."
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Congrats.
what could be the bad news?
Yeah.
He said, "Well, the role you auditioned for has been written out. They want you for the cab driver." I said, "Man, I didn't fly all the way to Atlanta to be the damn cab driver."
Right.
I said, "I'm gonna pass on this." He said, No, Tony, you can't pass because this is Jason Hall. He's nominated for an Oscar. This is gonna be an important film. Yeah. You gotta do it. So I said, "Okay." So I fly back to Atlanta on my dime.
Yeah. Wow.
And I have 2 scenes.
Yeah.
So I did one, and the day is kind of closing down. It's getting towards the end of the shooting day, and I'm like, "When are we going to shoot my other scene?" They said, "Oh, we're going to shoot that in a couple of weeks. You got to come back."
Oh man.
Now they think I live across town, right?
Right.
So I fly back to LA, then I fly back to Atlanta. This is what three
This is
trips
their
on my
third time.
dime.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, I shoot the rest of it, and I get back to LA, and that same casting director wants to see me for NCIS New Orleans.
Okay.
So I said, okay. So really cool guest star role.
Yeah.
Didn't book it.
Okay.
And then she calls again. She wants to see me for another role. Not quite as good, but a cool role.
Right.
So I audition for it and I book it.
Okay.
And they fly me in.
Okay.
And
Ooh.
yeah. So I do that thing. And while I'm there, while I'm in New Orleans, I get a call from my agent saying they want to read you for a show. Same casting director wants to read me for Queen Sugar.
Oh yeah, the casting director like you.
Right.
But think about it. Had I turned down "Thank you for your service," I wouldn't have gotten called for NCIS New Orleans. Had I booked that first role on NCIS New Orleans, I wouldn't have been there in New Orleans when they were reading for the character Clive.
Oh wow.
And so anyway, I
just never
audition,
know.
I book it,
Right.
and guess what?
Yeah.
Tina Mabry, who directed
Yeah.
The Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat, was one of the producers on Queen Sugar.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if I never asked her.
But I mean, everything aligns when you just trust the process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
That's a blessing.
yeah, absolutely. So, sometimes opening your heart and opening your mind to things can bring about something better.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
You've had obviously this has been a long journey for you over decades, and you've learned a lot.
And it doesn't feel that way.
Right.
It feels like yesterday. I feel like I'm your age,
Yeah.
Omar. I mean, I really do.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
go on. But I do recognize that I got a few country miles on me.
That's a blessing that you
Yeah.
feel that way after all this time. You know what I'm saying? Because you've been around, journeying through this country, taking on different roles, traveling, like you say. What's some advice that you can give to us that's rising up in the industry or anybody else that's watching in the entertainment industry? What can you tell them that can encourage them to keep going?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, you never know when your moment is. We all think it's when we're 21 and we're cute, and that's the time when we're going to get our greatest shine.
Right.
And I know of a number of people who have hung in there for decades, and it's just now starting to happen.
Wow.
So you never know when your moment is. Yeah. Additionally, I would say we don't have the luxury of being simply actors.
Yeah.
I think it's important to write, to produce, and because, again, they're all part of the same whole. When you're a creative film artist, you are a creative film artist, and sometimes you're the producer, sometimes you're the writer, sometimes you're the actor, or sometimes you're all three.
Yeah.
And I've been all three, and I'm still enjoying the journey. So I'm saying, open your mind. Don't focus on just one aspect of the industry. Focus on all of them, and try to master writing a screenplay, master learning a monologue, master producing, even if you're a jackleg producer, meaning that you're kind of doing it under the table, but you begin the learning process, and eventually you will graduate to being to working your actors on a SAG contract. You know what I mean? You will get there, but it begins, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated by the process.
Don't be intimidated by the process. Now you have the Supremes getting ready to come out. What else are you working on? Where can people find you on socials? How can they stay connected with Tony Winters?
I'm pretty active on social media. I'm active with both of you guys. I'm Pretty Tony Winters. Why do I hate saying it myself? No, hold on. There's a story behind that. If you've ever seen The Mac, Max Julian, who was an independent film producer in the 70s, made this little movie called The Mac, which became a phenomenon.
Classic.
There was a character in it played by Dick Anthony Williams named Pretty Tony. And I saw that when I was a teenager, and I was like, man, that is a cool freaking name.
So everybody was calling you Pretty Tony.
Well, no, nobody was calling me that. But when the advent of social media came about, and for Instagram, everybody had to come up with a nickname. I said, I'm going to call myself Pretty Tony. And I've gotten more shit about it. But it's a wonderful conversation piece.
I believe it because you haven't changed it.
No, I stick. There have been times I thought about it because people say,
you can
"What's your
now.
what's your Instagram handle?" Pretty Tony Winters.
Yeah, you can't change it now.
Pretty Tony Winters. I'm on X, Twitter.
Yes.
Tony Winters 128. I'm on Facebook under Tony Winters. And is there anything else?
That's all
I
you
think
got.
I'm on TikTok. But,
Okay, TikTok.
I couldn't tell you what my handle is, but you can find
Pretty
me.
Tony.
I think it is pretty. It's Pretty Tony _ It's Pretty _ Tony _ Winters.
Okay, there we go. Okay. He'll pop right up.
Well, that's been a dope episode, man. I'm so honored to have you on the show, bro. Drop some dope gems, and I already know y'all gonna tap into that monologue, you know what I'm saying? Get some game. We're honored. Hey, next episode coming up. This was a dope episode of BoomBox Weekly. I'm Omar Cook.
I'm Gentel Sharrie.
And I'm Tony Winters.
Woo, woo.
Ready. And we out.
We out.
We out.
You're listening to BoomBox Weekly.